and welcome to the first part of the Knit Your First Hat series. Today I'm going to be talking about sizes and how to read a pattern, about gauge, and then we will cast on for this hat. So this hat, the Easy Peasy Stripy Beanie, comes with this pattern, which you can get by signing up for my newsletter. You'll see it's made of a ribbing section here, then a bit of a plain colour A section, then some striping, then a short plain colour B section, and then the crown. And there are several options, so you can make the ribbing section this long so that it's suitable for folding over and wearing like I am in this photo, or you can make it with a shorter brim like this example here, which is a different pattern but just to illustrate, which is just a single brim and doesn't get folded over. If you buy the kit from me, you will receive two colours with some wool needles and some knitting needles. These are circular 4.5mm knitting needles, and we will be working the whole project on these needles. For the purposes of today's demonstration, I'm going to be using thicker needles and thicker yarn though, just because I find it makes it easier for you to see. But before we start knitting it actually on the needles, I just want to go through a few things on the pattern. So you'll see it's got the sizes here, and it will say baby, bracket, toddler, child, adult, SML, and you'll see adult, SML are in bold. And that pattern is continued, so wherever it says the head circumference, wherever it says how many stitches to cast on, you'll always see that pattern of one number and then the rest of the number in brackets with 3 adult sizes in bold. So one thing you could do before you start is to circle or highlight the numbers for the size that you've chosen to knit. The best way to find that is to measure your head. So I've put a head circumference, which is taken kind of where you want to wear your hat, so from kind of the top of your neck or the base of your head at the back, over the ears, and then over the forehead. And then there's also a length from the crown to the base of your ears, which again you can measure on your head and choose here. I will say that because of this ribbing, which is quite stretchy, and the fact that the knitting itself is quite stretchy, you will be able to wear it, you know, even if you're between two sizes. You know, if you want it snugger, go down a size. If you want it looser, go up a size. It's not like a fitted jumper or something where you'd really have issues if you knit the wrong size. One more important thing to note is that I put on the tools a 4.5mm needle, which is also what I'm including in the kit. However, if this is your first project, you don't really know if you're a looser or a tighter knitter, but in future you'll probably find out whether you tend to be we tend to knit quite tightly or quite loosely, and it's got to do with how much tension you put on the yarn as you're knitting. So that can mean that even if you knit the right size in the needles suggested, you get a hat that's slightly bigger or smaller, which is why I've put here a gauge of 19 stitches and 25 rows per 10 cm by 10 cm square. So that's a really handy way to check whether your tension on your needles is going to knit up to a similar kind of gauge. So the gauge is, you know, how many rows and how many rows, what did I say? How many stitches, sorry, and how many rows you have for a 10 cm by 10 cm square. So the easiest way to do that would be to take measuring tape and kind of measure and count the number of stitches between. I will draw a little diagram to you to explain how knit stitches work in a second as well. But that's something really important to look out for. Again, because this is your first hat, and because the hat is flexible, I think it's alright if you don't want to do a swatch. But equally, if it is your first time knitting, it might be quite handy to just practice the cast on with a spare little bit of yarn and make a little square, and then you can measure, sorry, not with any yarn, with the yarn that you're going to use, and that way you could measure whether you are kind of knitting tighter or looser by measuring how many stitches you have, and it will also allow you to practice some of the stitches, especially if you're a complete novice beginner, before you do the hat. It's not necessary, but it is a good idea to do what's called a swatch, where you do 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, or even if you're just to cast on 20 stitches, you could then, using maths, calculate, okay, it's taken me 5 centimeters to do 20 stitches, it'll take me 40 stitches to do 10 centimeters, for example. Right, that's enough waffling about gauge. Let's get to the actual knitting bit, and that starts with casting on, which is the first row in the pattern. So for this cast on, you want the tail, so you want to start with a tail that is at least 4 times the circumference of your hat. So what I would do is take your yarn and just loop it around your head like that, and do that 4 times, so that you've got the right amount. Now, because I'm just demonstrating with this, I'm not going to measure it all the way. And then what you want to do is you want to take the ball of your yarn away from you and the end that's kind of loose or cut off towards you, and have the yarn running like that. And then you take your hand and you grab the piece of string here, yeah, like that, so you've still got the yarn going away, and you take it with your fingers number 3, 4, 5. And then you take your thumb and index finger and put it through the loop, and like that. So you're holding it like a slingshot. Yeah? Then you remember, you can re-watch this, you can slow it down on YouTube, whatever, if you need to see it again. Now, what I did there, sorry, was sometimes, take my needle and just turn it once, and you've got a little twist on your yarn. This is just going to be the start, and we're not going to count this as an official stitch, but you'll see that in a second. Don't worry, this is probably one of the trickiest rows in your pattern, so if you can do this, you can definitely do the rest. It's just worth it to get a really nice stretchy hem. That's why it's worth learning a slightly trickier thing at the beginning, I think. So we're going to go under both the yarns in your thumb, then through the gap in your thumb there, then come over to your index finger and take the yarn off the yarn that's coming from the front of the index finger, pick that up and pass it back through the hole you were in before. Yeah, so you can see how I've picked it up there. You can see how this one's twisted, so I have to move my thumb slightly to push the yarn back through there to the back, and then bring it forward through that hole there. And then we let go of the thumb and tighten the yarn that is towards us here. Okay, so I'm going to do that a couple more times, and then if you need to see it more times, you can just wind it back and re-watch it. Let me show it from a different angle as well. I'm going to stand up. Okay, so under both, down through the hole towards the palm of your hand, up, bringing it towards you, get the other piece of yarn, come back and go up towards the tip of your thumb this time, out to the back and towards you again. And then, let me do that one more time, a little bit faster. And you don't need to pull, after you do one, you don't need to pull this string super tight, because again we don't want it to be that tight. Just kind of tighten it enough that it sits in a neat row along there, and then do the next one. Right, so I'm going to do those sped up now and then come back to you. You will need to keep track of how many stitches you've cast on, so that you cast on the exact number of stitches as specified in the pattern for your size. Right, so once you have cast on the number of stitches that it says, so if for example you were doing the baby size, that would be 64 as it says here on the pattern. Once you do that, we're going to join this in the round. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. We will cover joining in the round and then doing the ribbing in part 2. Thanks so much for watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below or to write to me at yana@row-dyeworks.co.uk. Thanks, bye.